Good day from the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow, as Russian flight controllers are counting down to the departure of 3 of the 6 crew members who have comprised the Expedition 45 crew for the past 141 days. Greetings to everyone on this day that will see the homecoming of Ali Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kamiya Yui, wrapping up almost 5 months on board the International Space Station since their launch atop a SOYUZ rocket from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on July 23rd. Everything is in work in preparation for the physical separation that will occur at 3:49 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time this morning. That will send the SOYUZ TMA-17M vehicle on its way towards a landing on the frosty steppe of Kazakhstan several hours later to wrap up the Expedition 45 mission. The Russian flight control team here in Korolyov is working with their counterparts across the Atlantic Ocean at the Johnson Space Center in Houston at the ISS Flight Control Room, where Flight Director Zeb Scoville is on console at this hour with the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers. Scoville having just completed a poll of his team of flight controllers. He is in the middle of your picture, seated with the dark jacket on. To his right is spacecraft communicator Rebecca Wingfield, and standing is astronaut Doug Wheelock, a veteran of SOYUZ and space station operations, who's on console along with other flight controllers as a second set of eyes watching over all of the preparations that have taken place to send Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui towards a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan that will occur at 7:12 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time, 7:12 and 14 seconds p.m. at the landing site northeast of Zhezkazgan, the remote town on the south-central steppe of Kazakhstan. That will be 1 hour and 43 minutes after sunset. We'll talk more about the preparations and activities in Kazakhstan in just a moment. The departure of Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui just a few minutes from now will leave on board the International Space Station the Expedition 46 crew. Expedition 46 officially will begin at the time of undocking as Commander Scott Kelly continues his role as commander. He is the current Expedition 45 commander, transitioning to Expedition 46, along with his one-year crewmate, Mikhail Kornienko, and Sergei Volkov, who arrived aboard the space station back in September. This trio will return to Earth in their own right on the night of March 1st, U.S. time, the morning of March 2nd in Kazakhstan, to wrap up the one-year mission for Kelly and Kornienko and 6 months on board the station for Sergei Volkov. Just about 3 hours ago, the departing crew members said farewell to their counterparts who will remain on board the International Space Station as they said goodbye to one another and closed the hatches behind them to begin the process of coming home. This is the video that was shot about 3 hours ago after the SOYUZ was activated, attached to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The departing crew members, Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui, you see Kjell Lindgren here, they gathered inside the small passageway in the Rosviet module before making their way across the docking interface into their SOYUZ TMA-17M spacecraft to begin the process of closing the hatch. The hatch actually did swing closed at 9:32 a.m. Moscow time, 12:32 a.m. Houston time, again about 3 hours ago, to start the crew on their way back to their landing several hours from now on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Once the hatch was closed, leak checks were completed on the docking interface between the SOYUZ and the Rosviet module. The hooks then were driven open on the Rosviet module side of the docking interface just after 2 a.m. Central Time this morning. The crew began to suit up in their Sokol launch and entry suits. They conducted leak checks on their suits. That was all completed by 2:30 a.m. Central Time. And as we said just about 10 minutes ago, the flight control team in Houston took a poll and gave their approval for undocking as Flight Director Zeb Scoville passed that on to his Russian counterpart here in the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. The stage now set for the undocking of the SOYUZ TMA-17M spacecraft. The command to begin the initiation of the opening of the hooks on the SOYUZ side of the docking interface will come just 13 minutes from now at 3:48 a.m. Central Time. It will take about 90 seconds for that to be completed, and at that point, springs on either side of the docking interface will push off against one another, and physical separation will occur at 3:49 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. 3 minutes later, at 3:52:30 Central Time, there will be an automated 8-second separation burn using 4 thrusters on the SOYUZ vehicle with a separation rate of about 0.59 meters per second to initiate an opening rate from the International Space Station that will take about 2 orbits of the Earth to complete. The SOYUZ spacecraft then will wind up about 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that will take place. The deorbit burn now scheduled at 6:19 and 19 seconds a.m. Central Time, a burn that will occur for 4 minutes and 40 seconds in duration. That will slow the SOYUZ down by about 128 meters per second to enable it to drop out of orbit to begin its high-speed reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Да, буквально минут через 5 у нас уже 12:43 будет. Принято.
Once again, once the SOYUZ separates from the Rosviet module just a few minutes from now, Expedition 45 will transition on board the station to Expedition 46 under the command of Scott Kelly. Again, the deorbit burn will occur at 6:19 and 19 seconds a.m. Central Time, 4 minutes and 40 seconds in duration. The SOYUZ will begin its descent back into the Earth's orbit, into the Earth's atmosphere. 27 minutes later, the 3 sections of the SOYUZ vehicle will separate pyrotechnically, leaving only the descent module to descend with the crew on board. Entry interface with the buildup of temperatures around the SOYUZ will take place at 6:49 a.m. Central Time, a maximum G load on the crew of about 4 to 5 Gs as they descend toward their landing site. The command to open the parachutes on the SOYUZ will be issued at 6:58 a.m. Central Time. First, the drogue chute, followed by the main chute on the SOYUZ vehicle, with the soft landing engines firing just a few feet above the ground, landing scheduled at 7:12 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 7:12 and 14 seconds p.m. at the landing site just 78 miles northeast of the remote town of Jezkazgan. The search and recovery forces comprising the Rosaviatsia Civil Air Patrol, which always is in charge, along with RSC Energia, of recovering returning crews from the International Space Station, are at the Jezkazgan airport. They will be heading towards the landing site in Russian Mi-8 helicopters soon after the deorbit burn is completed later this morning, not yet quite at undocking time. They are making their way from their respective hotels in Jezkazgan to the airport there. The current forecast for landing is a little bit sporty this morning, calling for an overcast ceiling at 700 feet, winds out of the southwest at 17 knots, gusting to 27 knots, so it's going to be quite a breezy morning at the landing site. The temperature at landing time is forecast to be 26 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill factor of 12 degrees Fahrenheit. The weather, the visibility will be about 4 miles and light snow flurries, some low drifting snow. The landing to occur 1 hour and 43 minutes after sunset. Once the Russian helicopters are airborne from Jezkazgan, they will send 8 Mi-8 helicopters to the landing site, again about 78 miles to the northeast. Two of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters will make their way to the midway point between the nominal landing site and the ballistic landing site to the southwest. The ballistic landing site stretching all the way from near the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the launch site in Kazakhstan, all the way to the nominal landing site, a distance of some 400 kilometers or so. But the prime focus of attention will be at the prime landing site, where 8 Russian Mi-8 helicopters, 2 Antonov fixed-wing aircraft serving as relay centers for command and data from the SOYUZ spacecraft, as well as voice from the crew, as Kononenko continues to provide voice updates on the status of the vehicle and his crewmates. He is the SOYUZ commander in the center seat of the SOYUZ vehicle, flanked on his left by Kimi Yui, who is the board engineer number 1, NASA's Kjell Lindgren in the right seat of the SOYUZ TMA-17M descent module. These 2 Antonov fixed-wing aircraft are also augmented by 4 all-terrain vehicles that will be at the landing site to quickly extract the crew from the spacecraft and send them back towards the staging city of Karaganda to the northeast of the landing site, where the crew will be taken for medical testing as well as for a post-landing ceremony, and then they will split up with Lindgren and Yui heading back to Houston in a NASA jet, Kononenko to fly back to the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in a Russian aircraft, the training base for the cosmonauts, where he will be reunited with his family. The night landing that is looming ahead of us over the next few hours is only the 6th for a SOYUZ in space station program history. It is the first landing after sunset, with 5 other landings having occurred pre-dawn, basically midnight to sunrise. But there are sufficient capabilities for the experienced search and rescue services to locate and retrieve the crew, including VHF locator beacons, satellite phones, global positioning system equipment, and as we mentioned before, both ground tracking and fixed-wing aircraft surveillance, as well as a well-trained night recovery crew to quickly extract the returning crew members from the SOYUZ spacecraft. Not clear at this point whether a medical tent will be erected at the landing site due to the weather and the nighttime operations that will be underway, but that's not an issue. If it is deemed by the head of the search and recovery forces that they wish to expedite the crew back to Karaganda, then the crew will simply be loaded from the spacecraft into Russian Mi-8 helicopters, 3 of them, for a quick return to Karaganda, about a 2-hour flight from the landing site back to Karaganda, where medical tests back at the Karaganda airport will take place. So we'll stand by after landing to see how the post-landing operations go at the behest of the search and recovery forces that will be on scene. At the time of landing, the crew on board the SOYUZ spacecraft will have spent 141 days in space and aboard the ISS since their arrival back on July 23rd. For Lindgren and Yui, wrapping up their first respective flights into space, again, 141 days in space. Oleg Kononenko, the veteran, wrapping up his 3rd flight into space and a total of 533 days in orbit. For this particular mission, 2,256 orbits of the Earth will have been traversed by this crew, totaling 59.6 million statute miles of the Earth.
Все. Выдал однократное R5, картинка видна четко на формате. Принято. Переходим на 95-ю страницу. Да. Выбираю формат сближения. Да. Принято.
We're coming up on the 5-minute mark until physical separation. The docking mechanism will be powered up about 1 minute before the command is issued to begin the opening of the hooks on the SOYUZ side of the docking interface. The Rassvet hooks were opened a couple of hours ago to set the stage for the physical separation of the SOYUZ vehicle from the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station.
Принято в норме. 175, 174. Армения.
The International Space Station currently flying 253 statute miles above the Earth, moving from southwest and northeast, crossing the border between China and Mongolia. All systems on the station in great shape. About to commence the operations for the undocking of the SOYUZ vehicle that will begin the journey home for Ali Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kimia Yui.
Наверное, включил фару. Ну, мы, наверное, включим фару. И выдадим R7.
Да, включайте фару и...
Давай. Включи фару. Выдали R7. Выдано. Да.
Принято.
Давай Кимия СВП.
Да, СВП.
Ага.
И готовлю всем.
Ага.
Через минуту.
Д2 не горит. Д2 не горит, С16 не горит.
Да, победил.
Принято.
Через 30 секунд. We're standing by for the issuance of the undocking command that will initiate the opening of the hooks on the Rosviet module side of the docking interface, the SOYUZ side of the docking interface as well. The hooks to be opened any minute now. We are in the process of acquiring a downlink television image from the SOYUZ vehicle as we pass over Russian ground stations.
Выдали команду Д7, Д11 есть, Д15 есть, Д17 есть, механ соединения на ТС-8 есть.
And we have confirmation from the visiting vehicle officer at Mission Control in Houston, Heidi Paris, that the docking mechanism on the SOYUZ vehicle has been powered up, setting the stage for the undocking command to open up the hooks on the SOYUZ side of the docking interface. Now receiving the overlaid view from the SOYUZ vehicle, looking at the Rosviet module from which Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui are about to depart to begin the journey home.
Принято.
Kononenko's call sign from this point on through landing is Antares for the name of his SOYUZ spacecraft. The SOYUZ commanders always use the same call sign every time they fly.
С13. Раз. Д15. Не горит. С11 есть. А13 есть. И наддув есть.
Да.
Переход на страницу 96.
Да. Готов. Секунду.
Принято.
Ага,
Чел тоже готов, да. Хорошо.
Kjell is ready.
The undocking command has been sent to initiate the opening of the hooks on the SOYUZ vehicle. We're moments away from physical separation.
Game control using the command radio link.
По КРЛ будете пересвет поиграть?
Are you going to play around?
Again, at the time of physical separation, Expedition 46 will formally begin aboard the International Space Station under the continuing command of NASA's Scott Kelly.
Механ соединение погасло. 49-10.
Mechanical capture is off. 12:49. 10. Understood.
Режим СП выполнен. Есть ГСО.
GSO confirmed.
Есть механизм.
Undocking confirmed at 12:49 and 44 seconds Moscow time, 3:49:44 Central time. Expedition 45 heading home for a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan.
Have a good stay. Don't miss us too much. We'll see you in March.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Thank you for working together. We'll be waiting for you as well.
Стыковочный агрегат чист.
Docking
Все нормально.
plane is clear and I can see it very well. Understood.
Режим ССВП выполнен.
SSVP mode complete.
Sergei Volkov on board the International Space Station, wishing his fellow cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko a good journey home,
ВВС готов есть.
saying we'll see you in March. That's when Volkov, Scott Kelly, and Mikhail Kornienko will come home. Again, undocking occurring at 3:49 and 44 seconds a.m. Central Time as the International Space Station passed over eastern Russia near the Chinese border.
Вот он, Сигнус.
How is Cygnus?
Большой.
It's large, yeah.
Перешли на 97-ю страницу.
We're on page 97.
Две минуты от расстыковки.
Undock plus 2 minutes.
As the SOYUZ TMA-17M spacecraft continues to back away from the Rossviet module, we're inside a minute from an 8-second separation burn by the SOYUZ using 4 thrusters that will increase its opening rate away from the station, eventually traveling the next 2 orbits to a distance of 12 kilometers away from the international outpost for the time of the deorbit burn that will send Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui back to Earth.
2:30 от момента расстыковки.
Undock plus 2.5 minutes.
ВВС готов есть.
BVS ready, confirmed. Copy.
Через 10. Да, 2:50.
250.
3 минуты есть включение. 3 минуты есть включение ДПО.
Minutes. DPO ignition confirmed.
And we have confirmed that the separation burn has occurred. It was an 8-second burn. You can see a more rapid departure now for the SOYUZ TMA-17M spacecraft. Very prominent at the center of the crosshairs are the 2 circular ultraflex solar arrays from the orbital ATK resupply ship, the Cygnus, the SS Geek Slayton II that arrived at the International Space Station, where Lindgren grappled the spacecraft just 2 days ago. Now he's heading home, wrapping up 141 days in space along with his crewmates, a journey of 2,256 orbits spanning 59.6 million miles.
Так, страница 98. Да. Выдаем И1.
Sending E1.
1.
Confirmed.
Да. Выдано И1.
E1 confirmed.
Есть признак спуск. Выдаем Д8.
Sending D8.
Д8. Ну давай. Д11 не горит.
Copy. D1 is off. D17 is off.
С11.
S11 off.
Давай посмотри.
Take another look. Looking. Kimia. Off.
Не горит. Да. Выдавай С18. До самой сердечки.
Send S18 and stay there.
С18. Да. 18. Да. Есть.
Confirmed.
A good view of the International Space Station as it and the SOYUZ TMA-17M spacecraft pass over the Sea of Okhotsk, heading now from northwest to southeast on a track that will carry it across the North Pacific a short time from now.
Moscow station, can I minimize the picture? Yes. Copy.
Так, КДУ.
KDU. Spherical bottles. 175, 174.
Да. Так, записал. Иду на формат ТВ.
Going to the TVS for display.
Oleg Kononenko seated in the center seat of the middle section of the Soyuz, the descent module, flanked on his left by Kimiya Yui of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Kjell Lindgren of NASA seated to the right of Kononenko as they continue to move away from the International Space Station, ultimately to a distance of 12 kilometers for the deorbit burn that will occur just about 3.5 hours from now. That deorbit burn to last 4 minutes and 40 seconds to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere and a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan, just about 78 miles to the northeast of the town of Zhezkazgan at 7:12 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 7:12 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, 1 hour and 43 minutes after sunset. The landing support team comprised of the search and recovery forces known as Rosaviatsa, along with RSC Energia, Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center personnel, flight surgeons and nurses for medical support, a NASA support team, and a JAXA support team, all standing by in the staging city of Zhezkazgan to make their way to the airport a short time from now, where they will begin to board helicopters, and one by one, 8 Russian Mi-8 helicopters will be airborne from Zhezkazgan to the northeast to the prime landing site, ultimately to fly in a circular racetrack pattern around the landing zone, waiting for the arrival of the 3 returning crew members. Once the Soyuz touches down, then the helicopters will descend to land themselves around the spacecraft or near the spacecraft for the quick extraction of the crew members. The weather conditions will determine later on today as to whether or not the crew members move into a medical tent that will be erected nearby the landing site, or whether they'll be loaded directly into the Russian helicopters for an expedited return to the original staging site of Karaganda to the northeast of the landing site, about a 2-hour helicopter ride where the crew will be split up after medical testing. Kononenko to return to Star City, the training base outside of Moscow here, and Lindgren and Yui to return on a NASA plane to the Johnson Space Center for an arrival about 24 hours after landing.
На формате устав. Уставки первой группы 1266.
Group 1 settings, 1266. No deorbit time. It's all asterisks. We can check it again.
Что?
Repeat your last, please. Antares, you can release the push to talk button. We can
Принято, отжимаем.
check SOYUZ data later. Copy.
once again, the undocking of the SOYUZ spacecraft carrying the 3 crew members, Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui, occurred on time at 3:49 and 44 seconds a.m. Central Time, 12:49 and 44 seconds p.m. here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow. Separation burn occurring 3 minutes later, an 8-second burst of 4 thrusters on the SOYUZ to begin an opening rate that will carry the SOYUZ to a distance of about 12 kilometers away from the station, 2 orbits from now, where the deorbit burn will occur, a 4-minute, 40-second firing of the SOYUZ braking rockets to slow the spacecraft down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to begin its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. The deorbit burn will occur at 6:19 and 19 seconds a.m. Central Time. That will be followed 27 minutes later by the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the SOYUZ. The orbital module, the uppermost section, will be discarded along with the instrumentation and propulsion module, the lower section, leaving only the middle section where the crew is strapped into their respective seats. Kononenko is the SOYUZ commander in the center seat, flanked on his left by Kimiya Yui, and on his right by Kjell Lindgren of NASA. The descent module will enter the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of about 62.3 statute miles at 6:49 a.m. Central Time, 3 minutes after the module separation. Just a few minutes later at 6:56 a.m. Central Time, we'll see the maximum G-loads on the crew build up to about 4 to 5 Gs, and about that same time, the peak heating on the heat shield of the SOYUZ will take place of about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit as it moves into the atmosphere. The peak heating will reduce as the spacecraft exits the plasma region in the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of about 34 kilometers. That will be followed a short time later at 6:58 a.m. Central Time by the command to open the parachutes at an altitude of 6.5 miles above the Earth. The 2 pilot parachutes are first deployed, the second of which extracts a drogue chute. The drogue chute is then released, measuring 24 square meters, slowing the SOYUZ down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. The main parachute is then released, covering an area of about 1,000 meters. It slows the SOYUZ to a descent rate of just 7.2 meters per second. Its harnesses first allow the SOYUZ to descend at an angle of 30 degrees to expel heat, then shifts the SOYUZ to a straight vertical descent as it approaches the landing site. In recent landings, we have been treated to a view of the SOYUZ under its main parachute for quite a long time before it actually touches down on the steppe of Kazakhstan. That will not be likely tonight, since the landing is occurring well after sunset, only the 6th night landing in space station history for a SOYUZ vehicle. The landing itself is scheduled at 7:12 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 7:12 and 14 seconds p.m. at the landing site, which again will be located just 78 statute miles to the northeast of the town of Kazakhstan. The landing support team will be moving soon to the Jez-Kazgan airport to begin preparations to board helicopters. The weather forecast at the landing site, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, is what you would expect from an early and mid-December time frame. The landing weather, as forecast by the Spaceflight Meteorology Group at the Johnson Space Center, calls for an overcast ceiling at the landing site at just 700 feet. Winds out of the southwest at 17 knots, gusting to 27 knots. A landing time temperature forecast to be 26 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill factor of 12 degrees Fahrenheit. And if the winds are a bit gustier, then that wind chill factor could dip to just 9 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll stand by for that. The visibility, just 4 miles and light snow flurries and some low blowing and drifting snow at the landing site. The snowpack not very deep at the landing site, but we do expect to see some snow, as you would expect for this time of the year in south-central Kazakhstan. So, with 141 days aboard the International Space Station wrapped up, Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui are drifting away from the International Space Station as we speak. Undocking occurring on time at 3:49 and 44 seconds a.m. Central Time. The hooks having opened at the docking interface between the SOYUZ and the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The crew on board the space station that's left, Scott Kelly, the commander, along with Sergei Volkov and Mikhail Kornienko. You're taking a look right now at Scott Kelly inside the orbital ATK Cygnus resupply vehicle that arrived at the station 2 days ago, which was grappled by Kjell Lindgren as the punctuation mark of his stay on orbit of 141 days. Scott Kelly, one of the one-year crew members on board the station, along with Kornienko. Kornienko, and Sergei Volkov to return to Earth in their own right on March 1st, U.S. time, the morning of March 2nd in Kazakhstan to wrap up their marathon mission. The crew on board the station now officially Expedition 46. They will only be a three-man crew for just 4 days until the launch coming up on December 15th of the next trio of residents to the International Space Station. That trio led by Soyuz Commander Yuri Malenchenko, who will fly in space for the 6th time, joined by NASA flight engineer Tim Kopra and European Space Agency flight engineer Tim Peake, only the second British citizen to fly in space and the first to the International Space Station. They've been in training down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan since November 30th. They wrapped up their final fit check of their SOYUZ TMA-19M spacecraft yesterday. They are taking a break today from activities. Tomorrow, the three segments of their SOYUZ booster, with the SOYUZ spacecraft itself encapsulated in the upper stage of the SOYUZ. Those three sections will be mated in the integration facility at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, with rollout of the SOYUZ to the launch pad scheduled for Sunday. So the pace of activity is quickened with a record-breaking 4-day interval between today's landing that is coming up and the launch of the next crew on December 15th. And, of course, we'll be covering all of that on NASA television. But next up on NASA TV will be our extended coverage of deorbit burn and landing of the Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui crew, with our coverage to begin at 6 a.m. Central Time, the deorbit burn scheduled at 6:19 a.m. Central Time, and landing just 53 minutes later on the steppe of Kazakhstan at 7:12 a.m. Central Time. We'll be covering all of that on NASA television. So we'll be back in less than 2 hours from now at 6 a.m. Central Time with our broadcast of deorbit burn and landing. We invite you to return to us at that time. For now, we'll sign off. This is Mission Control Korolyov.